and welcome to the Comicave and Razz Reviews Fright Fest special for Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody! So Comicave has sent over a bunch of questions regarding horror films for me that I'm gonna do my best to answer. So here's the first question. Out of these 5 classics, Halloween, Scream, It, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street, pick your favorite and tell us why so. Okay, I mean, all these films are fun horror flicks. They're definitely a big part of the genre, and they're definitely Halloween themed. And I like all of them, even though they're not, the best films ever made. But for some reason, I think if I pick out of all of them, for me, it would be Scream. I mean, the reason for that is because these films tend to be a little campy and, a little silly sometimes. You're not supposed to take them seriously. And I'm not a child of the 80s, I'm a child of the 90s. So when I was growing up, these films were kind of older. And Scream came out when I was a teenager. And it sort of took these films and all their tropes and celebrated them at the same time, kind of made fun of them, which was fun. So it's a movie that never took itself seriously and poked fun at all the different elements that make those horror films so much fun, but also sometimes not so great, not so highbrow cinema. So I really liked that as a kid, and I grew up in the 90s, and when Scream came out, I watched in the cinema, and it just stuck with me. It also has a very iconic, scary villain, and I mean, not that scary, but still, for a kid, it was. And at the time, it was hard to get something that iconic, so late in the game when you had all these, Jason Voorhees and so on. You had villains already, but somehow, Ghostface still made it and still became iconic even though it came late in the game, so I gotta respect that. So I like Scream. It doesn't take itself seriously, it knows what it's supposed to be, and it celebrates and pokes fun and, has a lot of fun with all of the tropes and all of the elements that make all of these horror films so iconic and so unique to their genre. The second question is, It movie 2017 versus It TV series 1990. This is a toughie because, the 1990 version is quite iconic, especially, the clown It and a fantastic performance by Tim Curry. And it's based on the book, and I actually have the book and I've read it and I like it. But somehow, in this case, I might actually go with the 2017 reboot, which is quite unusual. It's unusual to like the reboot of the film rather than the original. But the reason for me is because in the original TV series, it was all about the clown and the scare and the horror and the supernatural elements of it all, which is fun, but I never really connected with those characters as much as I did in the 2017. I really liked those kids, and I felt that that movie had a lot of heart, a lot more than the original series. And I ended up kind of investing in their story and rooting for them and wanting them to be okay, which was a big part of, my enjoyment of the film overall, because I wanted them to survive. I wanted them to defeat the It clown. And, Skarsgård also did a fantastic job. And he created a more disturbing version of the clown, than the 1990s sort of just horror campy version. So it really worked for me. So interestingly enough, I would go with the 2017 version. What, in your opinion, makes a horror movie good? You'd start first with the thing that makes any movie good. A good story, a good script. Any good film is a good story well told. So the story of the film has to be good. It shouldn't be just a throwaway storyline just so we can have a horror film. The audience always can feel when there's not a lot of effort put into the script. So a good script with good strong characters and strong motivations and really nice climax tends to make any film good, especially a horror film. I think what makes a horror film specifically really good when it comes to script is its main characters, because it's very easy to get hung up on the villains and not really put enough work into the main characters and make us like them. A lot of horror films that aren't very good or well made tend to treat their protagonists as just a conduit, as just a tool for them to get scared or to get tortured or to get killed so that we can enjoy some horror, which is fun, but it doesn't doesn't make you invested. It doesn't really connect with the audience. It doesn't leave us with a lasting impression. So writing a good story, and most importantly, writing good main characters that we care about, that we like, that we root for, that we're invested in, makes a very good horror movie experience. I think the second thing would be, it has to be scary. I mean, it is a horror film. And scary is in two categories. So you have your jump scares, but you also have your atmospheric sort of creepy vibe. And I think a combination of both works really well. Having enough jump scares to scare you in the moment, but more importantly, having this mood and atmosphere of horror and fear that kind of stays with you. That's the stuff that you think about after you stop watching the movie. The jump scares only scare you in the movie, but they don't come back. But you know, the stuff where you create this atmosphere, this really slow, uncomfortable mood that after the film, like 3-4 days later, you're still kind of creeped out. That's what makes it really good horror film. Like, you go in the middle of the night to get some water from the kitchen, and you know, you turn off the light and you kind of walk really fast back to the bedroom because you're kind of creeped out. That's the kind of horror that really, really works and makes a very good film. Oh, that was the second thing. The third thing I would say is what the scary thing is a very important part of what makes a horror movie work for me. Whatever it is, a ghost, a monster, a human killer, it doesn't matter. It has to be interesting enough, and it has to be connected to the world and connected to the story and connected to a theme or an idea. You don't want the scary thing in the film to be replaceable. Like, you can remove this and put something else there and the movie wouldn't change. That's when the villain would be weak. You want it to be an integral part, rooted in the story of the character and the world that you're building around them, that, you know, they become memorable and they become an integral part of that world and that universe. That's what makes a really cool, scary thing, whether it's a villain or, you know, a monster or whatever. So that has to work. The villain and the monster element has to really work. It shouldn't be fake, it shouldn't be lame, we shouldn't see too much of it. It has to really get to us, have to leave a lasting impression, good design, good performance, but also a good part of the story and a good part of the world. So I think that's it. I mean, all the other elements like, you know, music and, you know, production and performances, all these things are sprinkles, they're details. The important stuff is this, you know, good characters, good story, a scary film, good villain, or good scary monster or thing. These are the things I think that make a good horror movie really good. Your top 3 horror movie recommendations. That's a tough one. Only 3 is insane. How am I gonna narrow this down? There's a lot of good horror out there. I mean, you have your campy slashers and your Friday 13th and all that, but what I would recommend for, I think people should watch all the time, it's hard to really narrow it down. I think this is really tough. If I only have to pick 3, I have to go with the classics. I have to bring up some classics because I gotta. I think the first one I would go to would be The Exorcist by William Friedkin, the original Exorcist in the 70s, I think 1973, 74. And the reason why that's a must horror watch is because it's a classic film and part of, you know, cinema history for a reason. It's a fantastic movie, and I know it's part of pop culture, so people have seen it. They haven't seen it a lot, but they probably saw, you know, the big scenes, the head turning around 360 thing, you know, the scary parts. But it's a completely different experience when you sit and watch the whole film from beginning to end, and it's a long movie. It's over 2 hours and a half. It's very slow, but it's a very atmospheric, contemplative, profound film. It's not just a silly horror movie, which is, I think, something not most people really realize. So it says a lot about, you know, the decadence of society, especially back in the 70s. It talks a lot about, you know, the relationship between us and our faith and how we deal with it. And it, you know, it has a character who's having a priest who's having a crisis of faith, who's dealing with it, and then suddenly has to deal with this over the top, beyond his own comprehension, demonic force, and how he defeats it. So it has this really interesting good versus evil thing going on beneath the surface, which makes it really powerful. It also like does some extreme, scary, uncomfortable, disturbing things that I can't believe they got away with in a movie, and I don't think we'll see that, or we can see that in modern day cinema. It's completely nuts. So it's definitely a classic for a reason, a wonderful film, and definitely a must watch. Check it out, watch it from beginning to end. It's fantastic. Another classic that I can't go without, and I can't mention any list of films without having a Stanley Kubrick film in there. It's just, you know, it has to be there. So The Shining is definitely one of my top horror films of all time. It's an extremely fantastic, wonderful, so well made horror film. It has some of the best cinematography in any film in the horror genre. It's so captivating and so memorable. It has unbelievable visuals that stay with you for years after you watch it. Unforgettable. And it's just a classic for a reason. It's an iconic film. Stanley Kubrick is a master at his craft, and he's a master at any film in any genre. So when he dabbled in horror, we got a masterpiece, and it's The Shining. Yeah, and that soundtrack, my God, that soundtrack, brr, 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 just amazing. You can't not put The Shining on this list. For the third film, I think I'll go with something modern because I've been doing classics. And I mean, modern horror is very complicated. And I think I would have to mention Ari Aster, who's a filmmaker who sort of rejuvenated the horror genre after it sort of became stagnant, and brought new life into it, and managed to create films that are both horror and art house at the same time, elevating the level of these films, you know, to cinematic, you know, heights. And if I mention one of those films, or if I'm gonna pick one, it would definitely be Hereditary. This movie is incredible, has some of the coolest scares, some most disturbing, powerful scenes. It really catches you off guard and takes your breath away in moments. It has unbelievable performances by the actors, and it's so dark and twisted and disturbing that it really stays with you for a while after. It's quite a powerful film, and of course it's quite multi-layered. It's really well made, and it has, you know, it's very philosophical, and it talks a lot about grief and pain and family. Like, it's just absolutely incredible. Hereditary is definitely a modern horror film that everybody should check. Well, that's it. Thank you guys for joining us and joining me and Comicave for our Fright Fest festival. And I hope you have a wonderful Halloween and enjoy watching your horror films. Make sure to find us on social media. You can find me at Razz Reviews on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can find Comicave as well. And you can visit their store in Outlet Mall. Please have fun, be safe this Halloween, and hopefully we'll see you again for, you know, another one of these. See ya. Bye-bye.